Okay, well, hopefully this one will be less painful for you guys, if not for me. We're going to do something we haven't done in another turn, which is the random events phase. I'll roll this. The red die will be the tens digit. It's a normal 11 to 66 die roll. And we see what comes of it. 31. Plague. Ignore prior to turn 5 except in looted or besieged provinces. And it works like famine. Each province with 3 or more combat units loses a combat unit as modified below. Okay. Let's see if there's any... We have a looted province here, but there's not 3 or more. Any others? We have besieged provinces here and here. Okay, so this is a possible problem. 1, 2, 3 or more. Okay. Lose a combat unit, lose an additional if besieged, looted, conquered, or Polish. Lose 1 less. Oh, I forgot about Poland. Poland has special movement rules, which I may have cheated. If with Gustavus or Wallenstein, friendly and present in the province. The province borders a river, friendly naval units present and unblockaded. All of the above are cumulative. So I think I'm losing 2 combat units. Now it doesn't say steps there. So I kind of got to hold an infantry, I guess. And artillery on its own is useless. Yep. And then here, 1, 2, 3. Oh wait, no, I don't lose 2, do I? Let's see. I am not besieged. I'll keep the extra infantry. So I'm not going to be able to raise more troops easily. That's one problem with what I did. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Alright, what are those cav? They're not elites. They're gendarmes. Those are my best cav. Wow. They're not bad in sieges. They only lose 1 off a storming event. So I'm definitely going to lose an infantry. Don't know if I want to lose my elite infantry, except that I can rebuild. Everything else, I could lose an elite cav, but there's a fair amount of them around. See, the nice thing about losing the elite infantry is that I can guarantee that I can rebuild that. So I guess that works. Alright, so that wasn't a great event for the Bavarians. Nobody else is really going to be affected by it. And now we go to finances and we add up the money. And again, it's not that simple a thing, right? I get half money for influenced areas, and then if they have any kind of weird symbols on them, I have to look that up and do it. But I'm just going to take care of it, come back, and show you what everybody's got. Or maybe start buying... Yeah, because I got to pay expenses and purchase units. So I may handle all of that. I don't know. We'll see. Here's the wages, or the amount of money left after maintenance has been paid. You can see Bavaria's in particularly bad shape. One of the weird things in this game is the way leaders are defined. I tried to figure this out. National leaders are, at the owning player's discretion, either combat units or non-combat units. Now that makes sense in combat, right? Because you can use them either as a bonus to your combat or as a light cap. But in other cases, it seems to imply that they're that as well. And in particular, that's of interest because during the maintenance phase, you got to pay $1 per unit. So I can declare them not combat units at that point. But in one particular case, I have to declare it a combat unit because it's what's holding Moravia for me. I would lose control of that, and Moravia would go to the neutrals pile if I don't pay a maintenance fee for it. That's how I'm reading it. I don't know how realistic or reasonable that is. Anyhow, that's where we're at. At this point, everybody's got the option to upgrade their territories. Now, I got to think kind of carefully about this. So, for example, France can't leave France until on turn 1 or 2. So, do I want to upgrade some things? Well, some of them, yes. The things that I actually get income off of seem like they might be a good idea. Now I gotta look to see what they are. Baden-Durlach. That's over here. Well, it looks safe, so I will upgrade that. And I think these cost me $1 each to do. I'm sorry, a ducat or something like that. But, yep, just $1. And then some of these others. Lorraine. Lorraine is in danger. I may not want to do that because of the danger to it. So I'll probably just spend the 2 to upgrade these 2 and leave Lorraine here. Now the question is there any reason why I'd want to upgrade Switzerland or the Ottomans? And I think the answer is no. Of course, I didn't buy units yet, which is also done during this phase. But in particular, okay, I no longer control the Swiss cards. The Swiss actually are removed. I see, this is weird. Do I control the Swiss card or no when I bought them? I don't know. I think unless I upgrade Switzerland to control, I can't use them as an army. So I think I'll pay for them, as far as I can tell. And now they show up where they're supposed to, I guess. They were stored in Switzerland. I think that I actually am not in Geneva anymore. I'm back here in Switzerland with them. They were only in Geneva if they're not controlled. And likewise, the port. Well, see, they talk about controlling player gets variable income, which I actually ended up giving the French. So I'm going to take the couple bucks away from them. They get a die roll of income. The Ottomans don't have an army per se. So I think I will also pay to upgrade my Turkish control, but I'm not going to worry about Lorraine just because it's in such a threatened location. It really should have a shield. And I have to make that decision for everyone else, you know. What are they willing to pay to upgrade because they want the extra income? And, you know, what's not safe and should they not have bought in the first place, perhaps? Okay, then the weird force allocation went. There was only one gendarme left. That got scooped up by Spain. Nobody else went for it. Basically, the risk of not getting it, it's a big, expensive piece. So it's tough for people to decide they wanted it. Somebody like France could have afforded padding themselves with it, but a lot of them went for elite cav instead. All the heavy artillery went. Basically, everybody got one who wanted one, and that's it. A lot of people wanted more than one. See, Montecuccoli's shown up with a force here. The Bohemians have raised another force. Now you can raise the mercenaries anywhere that you control, as far as I can tell. But the national troops you can't. And that's kind of the big limitation on Spain. So I can raise a fairly large army here in the Spanish Netherlands to face the Dutch, assuming that they attack me. We're not sure what's going to happen at this point because, you know, both the Palatinate and the Bavarians have done very well. They may not want to maintain their alliance because the threat of the Bavarians, especially getting the crown, is scary. On the other hand, the Palatinate probably wants to maintain a war with Austria unless they can get an agreement that, hey, yeah, you can keep Moravia and Bohemia and all that, which seems unlikely. The Austrians are, you know, we'll see when we come to the diplomacy. The French force built here is going to, my intention is to get Saxe-Weimar so that I can start actually playing in the field. And let's see, we've got a Danish force back here, but Christian's not a particularly good leader. So I built my forces up over here as well as down here. I don't have a whole lot of money with the Palatinate, although I seem to have held on to more than I intended to. In terms of bidding, it's obvious that military power is more impressive than what you can just buy, but military power is also limited. You only have so much force on the board. I guess you could have a lot more. There's still a lot of pieces left that people could be buying. There's mercenaries, etc. But we saw a couple of small things fall. So, for example, the Spanish put Strasbourg up. France bought it for 2 instead. You know, it's hard to justify paying too much for these things, but it kind of sucks to use your action and get something that's not really useful to you. The Austrians decided to put a call in on Mansfeld, though. There's no real penalty there. Mansfeld's Roman Catholic. He's not anti-anything. He's just pro-Palatine, which means since they control him, that means nothing, basically. They give 50% more on their bid in either case. But the Spanish ended up bidding the Palatinate up to 9. The Palatinate only had to pay $6 for that. But still, that cuts into their income. And if they didn't have cash, they'd have to be giving cards away. Now, the Palatinate doesn't have to give a card for winning the bid on him because they already held him. Wallenstein's the special case where you have to give him a card every turn, and he's just scary and not good enough to qualify for it. He should be double plus good. All right, so that's kind of where we are, and now the Austrians get the next shot at a bid. I don't think they want to make another bid. They already bid on him. They can't go for that. I don't know if there's anything sitting around. See, there's like... if anybody's sitting on something that's kind of against their religion or doesn't like them, it might be worth it. It also might be worth bidding against France, force them to pay to hold on to their properties. Because that's kind of the neat thing. So, like, you know, I could take a shot at, this just went this turn, but I could take a shot at, say Switzerland, which would be really useful to me, and offer a bid of $5. Now, the French get a bonus on Switzerland because it's in their control pile, but I make them keep paying if they want to hold on to it. Or it changes hands, and then I have to keep paying if I want to hold on to it. Obviously, the Austrians aren't interested in that, but the Spaniards are. It's a little bit more painful when you're going for something, you know, where someone has more advantages than you do, or where you have a penalty. They might well let you take a cheap territory, like whatever the hell this is, Archbishop of Bremen, if it's not strategically important, by letting you throw a lot of money at it. Money's important because it lets you buy soldiers, maybe. But the problem is, of course, you need leaders for the soldiers to work. And they're an additional expense. I, kind of went cheap again with the Austrians as an example. But I kind of want to stockpile my money. In some ways, stockpiling your money is good because you're kind of sandbagging everyone by looking like you're a little weaker. They might notice your huge money, but they might not realize quite what you can do with it. And I don't realize quite what you can do with it because, hey, it's my first play, right? But I'm beginning to suspect that having a big pile of money has a lot of neat advantages to it where you can turn the game around. The thing is, though, your armies don't move very far. They move a couple of areas in the course of a turn, and there aren't that many turns in the game. 10 to 15, maybe. Although the Austrians are going to lose a significant amount of territory to Mansfeld. Probably a space. That's really about all he can take with his forces because he doesn't have another leader under him. Although he could leave... nah, he really can't. He can't leave uncontrolled units, the white units, sitting around in other territories without a leader. That went fairly cheap. What didn't go fairly cheap was Switzerland. France spent 14 of their money to get a 21 bid actually into place to overcome Spain, who put a 19 bid, almost all their money. Why is it so important? Well, because this is a major set of forces facing is that the Cardinal? That's Cordoba, and he has no pluses. That's horrible. Cordoba's an excellent leader. Wow. Very weird. Anyway, that's weird. And the Cardinal Infante is even better. They seem to, the pluses seem to be pretty minor, but the thing is, I mean, to consider Cordoba to be the equivalent of Thurn seems absolutely goofy to me. I think he's more on the realm of Montecuccoli, okay? But Spinola is only a single plus, you know, I mean, you don't have a lot of variance there. I wish there was a little bit more variance in the ranking of the leaders. Like Montecuccoli is certainly significantly not as impressive as Spinola was in many ways. Wow. We got yeah, we got Turenne in here. He's only got one. Turenne's one of the greatest generals of all time. Might be, you know, it's like they take Adolphus, who was defeated at times, seldom, who was fought to draws, who didn't always, you know, we're not talking about the Napoleon of his era, although he was close. But quite honestly, Turenne was pretty damn impressive where he was. He didn't fight Adolphus, obviously. They were on the same side. So it's kind of hard to justify, you know, okay, he's twice as good as these outstanding leaders, and then just not enough discrimination in values. Anyway, as we can see, the cost of holding Switzerland was high, and now that means that something else could fall. I can't throw the bidding back on Switzerland, but I could throw it onto something like the Ottoman Empire. Of course, somebody other than France who's anti-Spain might buy that. Spain's not particularly interested in that anyway, but he might be interested in some of the other territories that are available here. Metz, which is at 104. This is the way you find things. You kind of, Metz is over here, you know. It's interesting. Lorraine is probably the most interesting to me. I don't know where Lorraine is. Okay, so now Lorraine I probably cheated with. Now you can build in an influenced area, I think. I don't know. Let me see. No, only controlled states, so I have to put these French forces that I built, say up in Metz, instead of Lorraine. Or, well, it doesn't matter because I can move through territories that I have my flags on for free. So that's fine. But yeah, buying Metz probably wouldn't do me much good with the troops there. I don't know. But I could buy something like Strasbourg or something. And it would probably do me some good. Interesting maneuvering here as the Austrians pick up Strasbourg for $1. The Spaniards, I think, get Lorraine for $1. I don't think the French were willing to go up to 2 on that because they would have actually had to spend all their money. And then the final thing is the Spanish went for Baden. Well, there's very little left. I can't defend the Ottomans at all. So I threw my $2 in to Baden, which is the most worthwhile place for me to defend at this point. That turns into 3. That would put a 4 bid required for Baden. For the Spanish to get that, they'd have to pay 8 because Baden is opposite religion. The French, having control of it already, aren't really affected by that because they get a bonus instead. You only get affected by one of the modifiers, the best one. So they backed off that, but it drained all of France's money. Now the only thing available, though, to be put up for bid from France is Hungary, is the Ottomans. But here's the problem. France needed a mercenary. They don't have one. So they've got this big force in Metz, but they're not going to be able to defend things. And the Spanish road's been completed. It runs up here. Now, the Spanish road has to be completed at the end of the game for it to be worth something. But still, that's a step forward that Spain has made, and they might be able to destroy this army here in Metz and really get some good movement going against the French. Now, things are going to open up differently next term when France is free. Probably means Spanish troops will be forming up in Spain for an invasion of France. And it's not like the Spanish have no other problems. They have Maurice up here to deal with, who maybe they can come with some kind of agreement with the Palatinate that, hey, we can extend that truce. You use the United Provinces to interfere in the 30 Years' War, and that'd be cool. Problem is, eventually, to get my full Roman road, my full Spanish road, I have to own the United Provinces. That's the terminal point on that side. It goes Milan to United Provinces. So I have to pretty much destroy the Dutch revolt here for any success. I might want to focus more on wiping France out, though. But that makes kind of a natural alliance between, if the Dutch were a player, between France and the Dutch. Now, the Palatinate is the player, and that means that the Dutch might not be so willing to start the war with the Spanish again, which it kind of makes sense, actually. You wouldn't see that in a game with the Dutch as an actual player, because their goals in the game would be a little different from what they actually wanted to see, because the Dutch kind of thought that maybe if they left the Spanish alone, things would settle down. Hence, in part, the truce. Although Maurice definitely was very anti-Spanish. So I don't know. Anyway, and what else do we have? We have, well, the next person to get a possible bid, because we've used both of these up completely, goes to the Swedes. Well, the Swedes could be interested in stealing the Ottomans from France. It gives a nice potential pool of money. You get to roll a die with the Ottomans if you control them. But the Swedes aren't really opposed to France in any way. And the Ottomans kind of serve their purpose just as well, whether, in terms of if they roll a 6, the Ottomans get a special raid or something. Yeah, the Polish aid is canceled for the turn, and Austrian and Spanish players lose 5 crowns of income. So, that aspect of it is good enough. The question is, do I want to be fighting with France over that? Well, another question is somebody else going to bring it up? So I'd have to keep money for that. I don't know that Sweden really wants to throw a bid in on too many things, but they would perhaps want to grab some cheapies if they can get them. And after that, the Palatinate again probably wants to grab cheapies. The hard one is Bavaria, because they have so little money. Now France has no money, and they're just screwed out of their plans. I think all the purchases have been made, all the bidding's been done. We didn't get to see a mercenary come out because France got stripped of their money. The Swedes went for Transylvania and a couple of doinkers. Transylvania got bought out from under what they were willing to pay for it. It's a real nuisance factor to the Austrians So the Austrians were willing to pay the double cost, and the Swedes just weren't really that interested in it. They figure they can conquer it if need be, if they want to move against Austria out of Poland, perhaps. Our Calvinists over here from the Palatinate added Brandenburg in its huge pile. That's an expensive grouping, $4, $5, $6, $7 to throw into their camp. But so I only used one bid for it. There are other Calvinists in here, places like Hesse-Darmstadt. I don't want to drain my money too far, and that's the same reason why, say, Bavaria isn't bidding on anything. They don't want to drain their money. They've got a big army on the field. Bavaria has a particular problem this turn in that they had a big army in the field and didn't take territories. But they really don't have the money to maintain that huge army. They weren't able to build up more units, etc. So they kind of have to try to do a better score. One nice thing about Brandenburg is it's, of course, an electorate. So I think that gives us 2. Bohemia should be 1. Yeah, there it is. I wasn't seeing 1 there. The real danger, though, is, of course, the Bavarians, who right now are sitting on none. Thought they had 1. The electorate of Bavaria comes later. And that's kind of weird, because I don't think that's going to be handled in the game unless there's a random event or something. The transfer of the Palatinate electorate to Bavaria. The territory didn't go to the Bavarians, although maybe they occupied it within the game terms. But, oh no, we've got an electorate here. What the hell? Oh, that's not, that's not Bavaria, that's Spain. Here we go. How many electorates do they have? Because Bavaria shouldn't be 1 right while Palatinate is 1. Are there 8? That would be very odd. Yeah, there's only 7, and Bavaria is not listed in them. I'm wondering, Edict of Restitution. Edict of Reversal. Ban on foreign troops. None of those seem to transfer it. See, I do not see Bavaria listed in this list, which is as it should be. Nor do I see anything here. I'm going to have to look because I don't see any anything that turns. Now, what would make sense is if you have 4 electorates, you would be, and you're the emperor who can call a council, you would be able to transfer the electorate from the Palatinate to Bavaria. That would make sense, but I don't see rules for that. Considered the current situation to not be the most stable of alliances, but after doing a little bit of randomization to check, nothing changed. The basic thing was the Protestant Bavarians. Well, it made sense for Spain to ally with them. It made sense for France to ally with them. Neither one did so, and no one could really pry them apart in a sensible manner. In particular, the Bavarians want these electoral crowns. Now, they're not going to get 4, even if they get all the bishoprics, because what I'm doing is I'm going to make the transfer of that crown a part of, just because of the limited number of turns, basically. You're only allowed to do one thing. A part of the Edict of Restitution as an option. That the the emperor could propose it with that. And then the Edict of Reversal, I would say I would say that's a requirement for it, that the crown would transfer back to the Palatinate. I can't see allowing that crown to stand, that the electoral crown to stand, having been shifted. Although one could decide to make the game more Machiavellian, make that an option as well, which would be cool as well. I could deal with either. The reason I'm not making it a specific proposal is that I don't believe that there's going to be many of these, many times to call a council. Is that what they call it? A diet. Yeah. The other weird thing is the way the rules are worded. The truce aspect of the diet would have to be one of the things that's passed in the diet, and you're only allowed to pass one thing. And the truce basically says, "Hey, we're not going to kill each other." I believe, like in Kingmaker, that's just an ancillary effect of any diet, even if nothing passes. No. I would guess that's actually an effect of it. You declare a truce because it's not like the leaders gather someplace and can be attacked. So okay, so that's one of the four. So now that actually brings an interesting question up. Where are the crowns? The Palatinate has one. Basically, the Austrians have three, which means they do not have the power because they have no one else willing to expend a crown. They don't have the power to prevent a war. They can't. Right. No. So no member of the Diet, but you can boycott, is allowed to attack another player. Basically, the Emperor could declare the Diet. Does he have to decide what he's going to call it for? No, I think he calls the Diet. People decide whether or not to show up. So in particular here, Palatinate has 2 votes in his hands. I'm wondering where the other votes are. They aren't all in the Austrian hands, I'll tell you that much. Saxons have a vote? I can't see. They should. There they are. The Swedes have a vote from the Saxons. So that's 3. 4, 5, 6. There should be another one. Okay, let's look at the list. Trier, Mainz, Cologne, those are the 3 archbishops. Saxony, Brandenburg, Lower Palatinate, and Bohemia. Okay, I'm missing Bohemia or Lower Palatinate. That's Lower Palatinate. I'm not seeing it. What does Bohemia look like? Bohemia looks like this. Bohemia looks like this. And there's no crown on it. They put the crown on Bavaria instead of Bohemia. What's up with that shit? Okay. So that may just be a misprint. But I like the transfer of the crown of Bavaria. So right now we have 1, 2, 3 crowns over on the Calvinists, 1 for the Lutherans, and that's 4 of the 7. Presumably, we could elect an emperor. Question, of course, is who would we allow to elect as emperor? And that's really an issue. The Swedes do not particularly want to bring the Palatinate in as emperor. The Bavarians sure the hell aren't going to help with that. So the Palatinate needs another point, right? They need one more electoral crown to make themselves emperor. And they've been kind of not moving towards it. Apparently that's an underlying understanding between them and the Bavarians, is that the Palatinate would not be going for the electoral crowns. The Bavarians would be going for them, and then they would dish. They already knew they were going to fight it out at the end. So the question then remains: is there anyone willing to support the Imperial plans for the Diet? The Imperials would like a truce. That's not going to happen. They would like... They could call one, but they're not going to get a truce beyond the Palatinate and the Bavarians. Those two are not able to block them. Wait, what? I have 1, 2, and then the third one that I can't see because it's not on the card. 3 there. Oh, this one doesn't exist. 4, 5, 6, 7. But you need 4 to win. But wait a minute. The Emperor gets votes. Hold on. First of all, does anybody only influence a card? Those are only worth a half vote each. Why do we have a control over here with the Swedes? What do they control? They control Saxony, okay. But the Emperor gets another vote. I think I'm going to call a truce. Which could, of course, mean that people want to avoid it. So this is the problem. The Emperor calls Diet. If the Emperor is going to call a Diet, we can demand an election at that point. We don't have to demand the election before the Diet is decided to be called. And the problem is, if the Emperor calls a Diet, if the Palatinate shows up to it to block the Edict of Restitution, he could end up getting reversed, getting trapped into the truce. Same would go true for the Swedes if they show up. So here we have 1, 2.5, 3.5 votes for... We have 4 votes for the Emperor, if we want it. We have 3.5 votes for the Edict of Restitution. Well, oh, you know what? The Emperor can't pass shit, can he? Oh, yes, he can. So, because he has the HRE card, which gives him an additional vote, which gives him 4 votes. 4 votes is not necessary. No, an item must receive more than 4 votes to pass. So, okay, there's no danger of the Emperor being able to pass even a truce. So nothing's going to happen, because he has to have more than 4 votes. He has to have basically electors in position as well as the Imperial card, or 5 of the electors. All right. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something really dangerous, and that would be, baked into the setup, basically. So we're going to go into throwing everything into the cup and starting the regular play. But before we start moving other people, we have to look here and see, do we have any marauders? No. Do we have any independents who are fighting off an enemy? No. Things like Poland are controlled by a player. So we do have a couple, though. We had an independent somewhere who fell too early. Someone attacked an independent. We'll ignore that for now. So I think that's all we have there, if I can remember. So yes, we go to the players. swap time. Bavarians, unfortunately for them, drew first. That meant they didn't get their free sieges they were counting here. They tried to do an assault on Trier, lost a step, and, well, a siege is just, or an assault, I think, is just one round. Maybe I'm wrong. No, there's more rounds. Okay, so I can keep fighting. The reason I want to do this is so I can move on and lay siege to Cologne and maybe win it on the siege table. Actually enough, Cologne does not have a fortress in it. So there was no real defense there. I mean, I got to fight a land battle, but that's fairly easy. No, you know, first fire, stuff like that. So that was pretty potent. So we managed to take both Trier with Koblenz and Cologne. We now have these guys in our conquered pile. We can't vote them, but we can upgrade them to influence. They become some votes then. I think we can vote them for imperial purposes, I'm not sure. But either way, we're going to want to upgrade those to influence. And we will not have enough no matter what to declare for an emperor. But we could, as an example, make the Swedes the emperor. Now, that, we don't really want to do that either. It's really, really tough to see which way we'd want to go with an imperial crown. So, for example, the Bavarians might be willing, you know, to support an edict of restitution, and probably the Habsburgs are fine to go along with that, but there aren't enough votes in that direction, because it has to be more than 4 still. So it looks like Bavaria is going to have to turn against the Palatinate, or presumably they could make do by attacking Saxony, but that could change the whole dynamics of the alliances if they're going for a 4th electoral crown, in terms of how everybody views them. This is interesting. Roll on a card. I don't think it's anywhere else. King of Hungary. If Hungary is not garrisoned, it's controlled by the Prince of Transylvania. I'll try to play that from now on, but I was just moving my Palatinate forces, or allied forces. They marched in, took this in an assault. Now it's garrisoned. It has to be, because otherwise we would lose control under normal circumstances. But apparently the Austrians had to have it garrisoned as well. Now that's funny, because they don't start with any troops there, so they wouldn't have been able to control it, and it started as controlled by them. Now I'm moving in to take Austria itself from them. Now you see that has quotations around its value, which means something. I don't know if it means they can't get any value from it, or if it's half value. I think it's half value. Yeah. Half and halved again if they get it up to influence. That's not really too big a deal, because I don't know. I don't know why, because I also don't know how it gets captured. In particular, I don't think it's just this one province, but it appears to be assigned to this one province. And likewise, if that were the case, I don't know. You know, I mean, I just don't know, because like Austria looks like it's a 2 province or 2 locations on the map province or whatever. And this isn't all very well described in the game. Again, hopefully this kind of stuff will be improved in the re-release of the game, where the designer's intentions will be clearly known. There might be a errata out there somewhere, but I'm happy just kind of faking it as I go. So we have 2 Austrias here, Upper and Lower Austria. To fit with other countries, I would say I have to take both of them. The problem is there's nowhere else I want to take, so stripping that away seems like it might be of some value. So I'll probably just siege it, because I don't have any more movement points. That player has had an impressive turn. First of all, he marched through the Netherlands, grabbed it all. That's a major, major effect there. I'm assuming that garrisoning one of these is sufficient. I got no idea. Again, some of the definitions aren't very clear. Anyway, that drove the Spanish out of here. Spanish leader Spinola is free, sort of. But because there was no cav to chase him, so he was able to run. But he could be attacked by the French and destroyed that way. So he might have to try to go into Luxembourg, into the city itself. And if he does that, well, then he can be captured and whatever. Now, what else? Made a move against Saxony. Now, I chose not to assault Saxony's fortress. We had a big field battle here, but not big enough to use the back sheet. The Dutch were big enough, but the Spaniards only had 5 counters. So, move on Saxony is important. This is enough to give him the empire if he wins it, and Sweden gets another turn. Now, he chose not to assault because his forces really weren't up to snuff. It would have been a close fight, and he had no real edge to it. So he figures, well, he could win on the siege table. That's iffy, to say the least, but that seems more advantageous at this moment, because with the big Dutch army available, he can turn on the Bavarians and change the nature of this and grab the empire on his own anyhow. So it's just a matter of, if he gets this, well, the Bavarians are going to turn on him, right? And if he doesn't get it, well, he'll turn on the Bavarians. He also took Silesia, left the garrison behind, which is kind of cool because he's leaving that out of his mercenary. And then got his troops together here in Lower Austria to prevent the Austrians from being able to easily attack him. He could have marched on into Transylvania, but then he couldn't have conglomerated his forces in the same way because he wouldn't have movement points left. He spent 1 to get into here and attack. This would get him to 3, and, well, that's it. And this one got him to 3 as well with the river there, so no biggie. Although conceivably he could go boop, boop, and get in there for just 1 point. So, but it does not matter. And we're up to the next player. And we push through the rest of the turn. Swedes take out Poland. They ended up besieging Warsaw. They haven't conquered it yet still. They left this open because they needed their army to face the Polish army. They beat the Polish army in a field battle. Didn't have any light cav to pursue it. Just remember, they had elites as their national cav. I'm hoping that they can get some decent cav at some point. They can't buy it, but the Swedish cav were basically the best cav in the era, and they don't have that as their national forces. Granted, a lot of it came from Finland, but it really was the best cav on the field. The Poles also, of course, had great cav, but they have it baked into their national forces. I'm not sure why these are double printed, because even, let's say Sweden conquers Poland, they can eventually get it up to control and will have those accessible again. I guess people can buy them as mercenaries while Poland can't, build them, and then that'll deprive Poland of as big an army, which would make a lot of sense. That would, no, then because it doesn't, well, it doesn't make sense to me that Swedes would have a pile of Polish troops on their side particularly, but Polish troops can't leave Poland, so that isn't that big a deal. What else have we had here? Let's see. The Austrians didn't have a chance of facing this force here. It's Thurn, but it's also Mansfeld there. So they swung up and took Upper Bohemia. And you can see, basically, you can take wherever you want. The other guy could leave garrisons behind, but that's very expensive. So what you really kind of want to do, if you're the more powerful guy, is catch his army and destroy it. And I think we're going to see that happen, but it depends on who moves first here. Right now, the Palatinate's the stronger power, though, in that area, by far. The next is the French, and they basically didn't have anything to do. And during the French turn, I noticed wow, I haven't been resolving sieges. In particular, the Swedes who got sieged here in Saxony. Oh, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, wow. That should have fallen during the Swedish turn. Instead, it happened before the French turn with the oops. As well, the Bavarians picked up the third of the bishoprics. And what else? The French could not do anything, but during their turn, they lost Geneva. Now, they still own Switzerland, and this isn't really part of Switzerland, so there's something kind of funky about all of that, but I assume it's now fully Spanish. And the Spanish, actually, I think I didn't mention their turn. They pulled Spinola back here. He was stuck here and able to move for free down into Italy. And that looks like that's the end of the turn. Nobody's won yet. Nobody has 30 things. Oh, wow, these guys are kind of big. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 20. They've got 23 and the 4 electorates. The other 3, even though it looks like there's 4 over here. Remember, I'm playing Bohemia as the electorate until something switches it. I'm not sure I'm playing things correctly in a lot of ways, especially in regards to some of the combat and movement type things. It'll definitely, I'm not comfortable with how it plays out that way, but I'm also not certain that I'm doing it right. I especially don't like that storming can be done again and again and again in a turn, because that means basically a small force has no chance of holding out for any length of time against a large force. And, well, there were a few instances of such, so I don't know. But basically, a small force of 1 strength point, the default garrison would have no chance. It would have basically no chance even if you only allowed 1 round. And there's no real starvation element to the siege table. It's just this. Now, here there's the... Let me check the rules on this because I may have been doing this wrong. The one each side eliminated Fort Falls. The next one's all besieged surrender. What's the difference there? Well, maybe surrender is the only way that you get half the mercenaries. I'm not sure. Or maybe it's meant to say, hey, the fort fell and you're stuck. See, this isn't too sensible either. Mounted units attacking a fort are lowered by 1. That means those gendarmes are still pretty damn potent. They're still 3s. Fall of a fortress. All national units are eliminated. 1/2 of all the... Yeah, see, that's not... So I'm not really sure why that surrenders is any different from the status that doesn't surrender. And again, you know, I'm assuming some of these inconsistencies will be nailed out of it, you know, in the new release. He's had 20 years to work on the game. I'm assuming he didn't spend much of that time on it, but, you know, thinking it over and getting feedback from people, etc., who thought the idea was cool enough that they should republish it, convinced him of that. Probably also convinced him, hey, clean it up. And that's certainly been the impression that I got from what little communication he put on Facebook over on the Wargamers group. I'm going to load this one up, and we'll keep going.